Rebel Anti-Style is a tome about rebellious fashion that's evolved throughout pop culture from, I guess, the early 50s, from the advent of Marlon Brando and James Dean, Marilyn Monroe and other cinematic icons, through to musical icons like Elvis Presley, Little Richard, James Brown, the Beatles, right up to the present day to good old Amy Winehouse. And the idea of sort of rebel style is something that always evolves, and things that were rebellious in style 50 years ago, for example the good old t-shirts, which Marlon Brando first wore in A Streetcar Named Desire, in an outrageous way he was wearing his underwear on the big screen. Now everybody has a t-shirt in their closet and everybody has some stupid icon or catchphrase or logo on their t-shirt. Rebellion is a spirit-driven thing. It's not defined by age, it's not defined by gender, it's not defined by ethnicity, it's really a rebel spirit. I think it's a healthy thing. I think people that step outside of the mainstream are often the ones that change culture, certainly. Steve Jobs is a rebel. He does things that resonate throughout the planet, but at the time they're considered to be against the mainstream. The iPod was a very rebellious idea. iTunes is a rebellious idea. I think there's rebellion everywhere. It's in corporate culture, it's in the individual culture, it's in the mainstream, and it's outside the mainstream in pop culture. I've been able to meet and interview many fashion and style and music rebels. Rufus Wainwright was one. He's a great musician and he really goes against the grain. Did you have a kind of career plan when you started out, or is this something that's just evolved naturally?
Well, I knew that I had something in terms of I knew that I had a sound when I first started, and it was just, you know, at the piano and with myself singing or certain songs on the guitar, but I knew that there was something that caught people's attention, so I just sort of went with that thread.
Others are John Varvatos, the fashion designer. Well, it's really a credit to you that you're keeping the spirit of kind of New York punk rock, for want of a better word, on the Bowery, and that's a great thing.
Well, you know, for me, music's always been about discovery, and when I used to come to CBGB's here on the Bowery, and it was always not just about who I was going to see, but who else might show up and who else was on the bill, and it was always that kind of sense of discovery or rediscovery. And tonight it's about rediscovery, really, because a lot of people haven't been listening to the New York Dolls for a while, and they have something new, really powerful to say.
You know, punk has become a kind of a holy grail within the rock and roll world. But for a time...
Yeah, but if you were involved in it, it's not so much of a holy grail as a,
of course,
as a plastic cup.
I'm always considered to be somewhat of a rebel. And it really comes through in my fashion work, where I sort of do things that are probably certainly not mainstream and not really intended to be, but I do try and operate in the mainstream. For example, doing a fashion collection with Target, but doing it in collaboration with David Bowie, who, although he's a huge star, is always really outside of the mainstream. I guess my rebellion today would be, you know, I'm 45 years old and I'm still playing in rock and roll bands. And maybe that's a big to getting old. Rebel Anti-Style is published in the US by Rizzoli, and it's on their Universe imprint. It's at all good booksellers. Rebels are everywhere, and the rebel spirit sort of lives on in a very healthy way.